Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is James. Welcome again to Comics and Carbonite. And today we're going to be reviewing Superman #1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Ivan Rice. So, the big news with Brian Michael Bendis coming over to DC, for me at least, was A, that he was coming on to Superman, and B, how excited DC seemed to be that he was coming on Superman. It was a little bit surprising to me because I had felt like the most interesting Superman stories I had read in some time had been the rebirth stuff in the last few years by Dan Jurgens on Action Comics, and especially Peter Tomasi on Superman. Tomasi had been knocking it out of the park on every issue. He, you know, really utilized well the idea of Superman being married to Lois and having a son, and what that would be like for Clark, what that would be like for Lois, and what it would be like to be the son of Superman. He did some beautiful issues. Some of the best issues of Superman that I think that have ever been done. So I was really surprised, and not necessarily pleasantly so, when I heard that Bendis was going to be on Superman. Now, I did think that it would give him a bit of a shot in the arm, give him some energy again, by working on Superman, but at the same time, I wasn't sure how much I liked the idea of it. I believe I was right in both respects. When Bendis wrote Man of Steel, the limited series, which recently wrapped up, it's the most interesting Bendis book I had read in years. It had the most energy, had the most, had the most energy in it. And Bendis hasn't had that much, much energy writing in some time. I apologize. I'm probably, using the same word over and over, but I'm really tired from my job, so I apologize. But at any rate, so there was things I liked a lot about the Man of Steel series, and there was even more stuff which I really didn't like. I First of all, the Man of Steel series is really depressing and is really a downer, which I didn't understand at all. Or at least I didn't understand why it was marketed the way it was. Now, if it's going to tell that sort of a story, then why would you call it the Man of Steel and, come up with all these. Like the first issue, it had this really hopeful, uh, picture of Superman on the front, and it felt like it was going to be this very hopeful thing, and sort of harken back to the John Byrne era when he did the 6-issue limited series Man of Steel back in '86, I believe it was. When that series came out, it changed a lot about Superman, but it did it in a very hopeful way and still very much felt like Superman. Um, Whereas this, with Bendis's Man of Steel, again, it left you very in a very down frame of mind. For one thing, you found out that Krypton had been destroyed by a villain named Rogal Zar, I think it was, and it hadn't exploded by natural causes, acts of nature, whatever you want to say. So now suddenly all the Kryptonians were murdered by a single being. Then on top of that, the same character, Rogal Zar, he destroys the Fortress of Solitude, as well as kills all of the Kryptonians in the Bottle City of Kandor. And on top of that, in some flashbacks that happen in each issue, you find out that Jor-El, who you recently discovered was still alive, comes back and basically takes Clark's son John by saying, "Well, he'll be better off with me, and we can see the universe together." And not only does John think, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'll just leave my parents and go off into the explore the universe with my grandpa," which I could have bought, but Bendis didn't sell it. I didn't think it didn't. I didn't buy the reasons why it was happening. Um, I mean, you can do anything if you sell it well enough, and if it's done well enough. But I just didn't buy the setup for it, the premise of it. So anyway, John decides to run off with Jor-El for, I don't know, 6 months or a year or something like that. And Lois, not only do Lois and Clark let him do it, but Lois is like, okay, well, I'll go with him too. Um, and so to me, it was just not. When you think about it, it's completely crazy. It would be like my dad showing up and saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm going to take your kid for a year to go around the country." No, you're not doing that, Dad. So I really didn't buy that. Um, but at any rate, with all of that and with all of this stuff with Rogal Zar, it was just a really downer of a limited series. It wasn't terrible. It had some great moments in it, but overall, I didn't like what it did to Superman's current state. I didn't really like that. It wasn't hopeful. It wasn't ultimately hopeful. I mean, I don't mind Superman being put through the ringer, but ultimately I want there to be, for it to be a hopeful story, and this was so depressing, and like I said, I just didn't buy the setup for it. So that series ended like that, and that basically just runs right into Superman. Now, there's going to be some huge spoilers here, so if you don't want to know what's going to happen, then you may want to check back later. But as we begin Superman number one, now, first of all, the great thing about Man of Steel as well as Superman is there's some fantastic art in here. Ivan Rice is doing the art in this first issue, and it's beautiful. He's just doing some awesome work here. But the story begins with, Clark is super depressed because Lois and John are gone. Now, there's some great moments again where, like in this part right here, he's taking on this whole Dominator armada and just wrecking all of their ships. I mean, there are some beautiful visuals in this book. But again, he's just in the doldrums, and understandably so. Um, Plus, John, the way Bendis writes John, he feels very out of character to me. I thought John was supposed to be 10 years old, maybe 11 by this point, but he reads more like a moody, 13 or 14-year-old to me. Um, so, as I said before, in Man of Steel, Rogal Zar destroyed the Fortress of Solitude. So, as it is, or as it was begun in the movies, I should say, Superman gets one of the main crystal that formed the Fortress of Solitude. And so, if he's got the crystal, why doesn't he just rebuild the Fortress of Solitude where it's at in the North Pole or wherever it's supposed to be? Um, Instead, he goes to, of all places, the Bermuda Triangle, which I didn't get at all. Now, if you would have explained why, okay, fine, he's going to put in the Bermuda Triangle, but there was no setup for it, nothing. It's just Superman goes to the Bermuda Triangle and decides to set up the new Fortress of Solitude there. Okay, why is that? I have no idea. Now, but then again, granted, uh, the idea is weird, but then you get this amazing splash page here by Rice um, with the new Fortress of Solitude. I mean, this is gorgeous. very much reminiscent of Superman Returns. I mean, when I turned this page, I felt like I was watching a adaptation of Superman Returns, like where the, you know, Krypton's rising, the new Krypton's rising from the ocean. But I mean, this is beautiful, but I don't understand why it's in the Bermuda Triangle. I don't get it. Um, so then, now I do like that Clark's got his old blue and white suit, you know, with the red tie. I dug that a lot. Then you've got this setup, which is either going to be one of my favorite things or one of my least favorite things, but I'm not sure where Bendis is taking it. Um, he has Martian Manhunter show up and basically tries to convince Superman that Superman should be, you know, more or less, says leading, but basically what he's saying is ruling humanity. Um, First of all, you know, now it does kind of show that Superman's a little bit like, okay, why are you telling me this? Or, you know, this is a little bit out of character. You can tell that he thinks this is a little bit out there, but I did feel like it was, you know, whoever this is supposed to be, because I don't believe it's Martian Manhunter. It's somebody that's a shape changer or, uh, you know, somebody's taken over his body, something like this. I don't know what's going on, but I don't believe it's Martian Manhunter. But I mean, I thought that Bendis did a pretty decent job with actually selling you on the idea that, you know, he's believable enough as being John Jones, but also shows you that Clark is kind of like, I don't know what he's talking about here. I will say, if Bendis is setting up some sort of a story where Superman takes over the Earth, I'm really gonna hate it. I hate that idea, and I don't think that's going to happen. So I'm definitely giving Bendis the benefit of the doubt here. I think it's more sold as this character, whoever this is supposed to be, is trying to sell Superman on this, but Superman's not buying, and eventually there's going to be a conflict, and it's a nice, and Rice really, I think he sells that right here when Superman kind of says, "Yeah, thanks, but no thanks," and you know, um, so I think Rice does a really good job of that. Uh, Now, huge spoilers here, huge spoilers. Um, at the end of the book, Superman's flying around, and suddenly something weird happens, and you know, at first you're not sure what's going on, and then the final uh, climactic scene here of the book is that Earth is in the Phantom Zone, which I love this idea. This is a super cool idea and has immense potential. So that's awesome. But I really didn't like the way that Bendis wrapped it up, the way he wrote about it. This is okay. So I'm going to read off the dialogue here. Now you can either think that this is now I know he's going for Superman being in shock, but again, it just I wasn't sold on that. I thought he could have done a much better job of showing Superman being in shock over this than of how he wrote it. So this is exactly what Bendis wrote in this part. So, you know, Superman just realized that the Earth is inside the Phantom Zone. And this is what we get. The Phantom Zone. The entire Earth is in the Phantom Zone. The Phantom Zone, where all of Krypton's most horrible monsters and criminals were banished. The Earth is inside the Phantom Zone. Uh, I felt like William Shatner had suddenly taken over Superman's body and was saying this. Now, I'm you know, maybe I'm being too critical. Maybe that's just, you know, me being a jerk. But I've I just felt like Bendis could have done a much better job of selling the complete insanity of that moment. And to me, his writing took me out of that moment, the way he wrote that. So, again, just like with Man of Steel, there's a lot of good stuff in here, and there's a lot of stuff which I did not like. The consistency of Bendis on Superman seems to be the inconsistency. Um, I hope that Bendis hits his stride with this book, but I don't think he's done it yet. I don't like a lot of the ideas that he's using with Superman. The more I think about it, the more I really dislike the idea of Krypton being destroyed by a villain, by a single being. Now that may all be retconned out after Doomsday Clock. I'm wondering if that's what's going to happen, but we'll see. Um, so yeah, tell me what you think. If you're a big Superman fan, there's too much happening in this book for you to not check it out. So you definitely should. Even if you're just a fan of really beautiful art, check it out for Ivan Rice's beautiful artwork, because it's gorgeous. And as I said, it's not that I hated this book. I didn't hate it by any means, but there's there's just too much in here that I'm just not liking some of the areas where it's taking Superman and his world, I guess you could say. So, but let me know what you think. I've got a lot of friends actually that really dig the new Superman, so you may be one of them. So tell me what you think in the comments. Please subscribe. Sorry if I was a little bit off tonight. I started a new job and I'm a little tired, but I wanted to get a video out, so I hope you'll forgive me for that. But at any rate, hope you guys like, subscribe. Please come back for my next video, and we'll see you later. Take care. Bye.